I've spent 10 years as a backcountry ranger in the Pacific Northwest. Out here, you don't just see the woods, you hear them. You learn to differentiate between the snap of a dry twig under a deer's hoof and the heavy thud of a bear. But there is a specific type of silence that happens right before the woods turn on you. It's a heavy, pressurized quiet, like the air right before a tornado hits. Last August, I was marking trails near Sector 4, a restricted zone due to frequent landslides. It was 6 p.m. The sun was a bruised purple, bleeding through the jagged peaks of the Cascades. I was packing my transit level when the wind died completely. Not a leaf stirred. That's when I heard it. A voice. It sounded exactly like my sister, Sarah. "David, help! I'm over here!" My stomach did a slow roll. My sister lives in Chicago. She's terrified of the outdoors. I stood frozen, the metal of my gear feeling unnaturally cold in my hands. I scanned the dense thicket of pines 50 yards away. The shadows there were deep, looking like ink spilled on velvet. "David, help! I'm over here!" The voice came again, but this time the uncanny valley hit me. The pitch was Sarah's, but the cadence was wrong. It was too rhythmic, too perfect, like a digital recording on a loop. My brain screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like lead. I reached for my bear spray, my knuckles white. Then the voice shifted. It stopped being Sarah. It started shifting through voices I knew, my old boss, my late grandfather, and finally, it landed on me. In my own voice, the exact tone I use when I'm tired, it whispered from the blackness of the trees. "I see you, David. Do you see me?" I didn't answer. In these woods, if you talk back to the shadows, you're inviting them in. I began a slow, agonizing backtrack toward my truck. Every time I stepped on a dry branch, the sound felt like a gunshot. I didn't turn my back. I kept my eyes on that one spot in the pines. That's when it emerged. It didn't walk. It unfolded. It was a tall, spindly thing, easily 8 feet high, with limbs that had too many joints. It had no face, just a smooth gray membrane where features should be. It stood there, vibrating, and then it spoke again, using my voice, but with a wet, gurgling sound underneath. "David, I'm over here." I got into my truck and drove until the gas light came on. I don't go to Sector 4 anymore, but sometimes, when I'm home alone, I hear my own voice coming from the hallway, whispering my sister's name. When I was 16, my friends and I used to hang out near Black Ridge Trail, a stretch of woods just outside our town in Oregon. It wasn't officially closed, but no one really hiked it anymore because the original loop had been damaged after a landslide. The sign at the entrance still showed a neat circular path, but locals knew it didn't actually connect back. That's why it was funny when Mason swore it did. He said he'd walked the whole loop with his uncle the previous summer and it led straight back to the parking lot. We argued for a while before deciding to prove it. It was late October, cold enough that our breath fogged the air, and the woods already looked darker than they should have at 5 p.m. The first mile was normal. Fallen leaves, snapping twigs, the occasional bird launching out of a bush. Then the path narrowed, and the trees grew taller, closer together, like they were leaning in to listen. We reached the part where the landslide should have cut the trail off, except it didn't. The ground was solid. The path continued forward, clean and undisturbed, like it had never collapsed at all. Mason laughed and told us we worried too much. We kept walking. About 20 minutes later, I noticed something strange. The trees had started to look identical. Same split bark on the right side, same crooked branch shaped like an elbow, same patch of exposed roots twisting across the path. I told myself forests just look similar. Then we passed the same crooked branch again. Mason stopped talking. No one joked anymore. We checked our phones. No signal, not even one bar. That wasn't unusual out there, but the air felt heavier now, quieter. No birds, no wind. The path began curving left, then left again, then left again. A slow spiral. We weren't looping outward, we were circling inward. The trees seemed closer, taller, the sky above us shrinking into a thin gray strip. That's when we saw the clearing. In the center stood a wooden trail sign. It read, Black Ridge Trail, 1.2 miles. Exactly what the sign at the entrance had said. Mason walked up to it and touched the wood. His hands started shaking. Carved beneath the fresh lettering were older words, deeply scratched in. Do not follow the loop. We didn't hear footsteps, we didn't hear breathing, but something shifted in the tree line around us. Not movement, position, as if whatever was out there had just stepped slightly closer. The path behind us was gone. Not hidden, gone. No opening, no break between the trees, just solid wall of trunks and branches. The clearing felt smaller with every second. The wooden sign creaked once, though there was no wind, and slowly the arrow beneath 1.2 miles turned. It rotated on its rusted nail until it pointed directly into the thickest, darkest part of the forest. None of us spoke. We walked where it pointed, because something in those woods decided the loop wasn't meant to end. They found the sign months later when a search team went looking for us. It stood in a clearing just half a mile from the parking lot. The arrow was pointing back toward town, and beneath the carved warning, there were 4 new scratches, 4 tall marks, like someone had started counting.
My cousin Tyler worked one summer at Pine Hollow State Park in Colorado. It was the kind of place where the trees grow so tall and tight together that daylight feels filtered, like the forest decides how much sky you're allowed to see. There was an old emergency call box system deep along the North Trail. It hadn't been used in years, but it was still wired to a backup recording unit in a metal shed about 3 miles in. One afternoon, the head ranger decided to test it before winter. When they reached the shed, they saw something strange. The red recording light was on. The system had been running for 47 hours. No emergency call had been logged at the station. They brought the recorder back and played it that evening. The first hour was normal forest noise: wind, leaves, footsteps. Then, a young male voice. I think I went off the marked trail. He didn't sound panicked, just annoyed. He said he'd circle back toward the ranger station. Hours passed in audio. The man kept walking. At one point, he laughed and said the trees looked the same in every direction. At hour 6, his voice shifted. I've seen that tree before. More walking. I've definitely seen that tree before. By hour 10, he was breathing harder. There's a sign here. Long pause. It says Pine Hollow Ranger Station, 0.4 miles. The ranger and Tyler froze. There was no ranger station anywhere near that shed. The only station was miles away in the opposite direction. The man continued walking. Leaves crunching, breathing faster. Then a door creaked open in the audio. Metal hinges. Enclosed echo. I made it, he said, relief in his voice. Silence for a few seconds. Then, this isn't right. The air inside sounded different. Hollow. No background noise, no insects, no wind. Just stillness. You said this would take me out. He wasn't talking to the recorder. He was talking to someone inside that structure with him. A second voice responded. Clear this time, not whispering. Low, close to the mic. He needed space. Tyler said his blood ran cold hearing that. The footsteps changed. Slow, deliberate, not panicked anymore. The young man's voice returned, but flatter, calmer. I understand. Another pause. Then the same voice, same tone. I can record now. From that moment forward, the breathing pattern changed. It didn't sound like someone exhausted and lost anymore. It sounded steady, controlled. For the next 30 hours, the voice simply described the woods, trails, trees, weather shifts, occasional footsteps approaching, and every time footsteps stopped outside the shed, the voice inside would say, "Keep walking, you'll find the ranger station soon." The recording ended when the shed door opened again. Tyler remembers this clearly. In the audio, you hear metal hinges, footsteps leaving, and then silence. When Tyler and the ranger had opened that shed earlier that day, it had been empty. But here's what made him quit. There was dust on the floor of that metal shed, and only one set of footprints inside, leading to the recorder, not out.
That's the end of tonight's stories. If any of them stayed with you, you know which one. Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. I'll see you soon.